Good evening. Bonsoir. Okay. Pardon me, this is going to be in English. Again, my name is Theo Tyson. I am the curator of fashion arts at the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. And we are gathered here for a few occasions, one of them being centered on the current exhibition, Africa Fashion, here at the McCord Stewart Museum, that was curated by one of our colleagues and aunties, Dr. Christine Chichinska. And one of the things that I want to do is kind of center us in this space and in a conversation about this woman's work, fashioning diaspora. What does that mean? What sort of topics, ideas, imaginaries that we are going to engage with? And there are some people that are not with us in this room for whatever reason. We call them our ancestors. Some of them are aunties, and as I say that, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. And I want to mention a few names that I offer gratitude for being here. One of them has to begin with Diane for the invitation and what community looks like as we were going through the thief of time. And that's something that Nadia explores, that an auntie is not really as much a person as it can also be a place. Dr. Andrea Barnwell Brownlee of Spelman College Museum of Fine Art was the first person to give me an opportunity to engage with a museum in a context that was authoritative and gave me a space that offered power. She also wore the most exceptional shapes. She was one of the first people I saw. I'm like, you look like what you do for a living. Working with her was Miss Ann Collins Smith from New Orleans, Louisiana, and she always offered a little extra flair as she skipped through the museum, making sure that everyone had a loaf of bread, a gallon of milk, and a stick of butter. There was also, of course, my mom. Of all the many jobs that she had, one of the ones that I remember most, and she always worked in finance, whether that was for the family or for a bank, is the way that she made sure that when we walked out of the house, even if it meant her doing without, that we were impeccably dressed. That is something from my lived experience as a Black American. It's something that I experienced when I was also living in Germany, and it's something I thought about the first time that I traveled to the continent as to what I would represent. I use the pronoun she, they, not just based on perhaps a sexual identity, but because I do not come here alone. Those three beautiful women that I mentioned are just three of many, that we are all here and that we stay here and that we take up this space. With regards to Africa Fashion, one of the things thinking about the Atlantic and how we triangulate our identities and existences, the intersections of our lived experiences, I want to use that to ask the first question to Diane of how did Africa Fashion become a catalyst for the symposium, this entire beautiful week, this gathering.
Thank you, Theo. Thank you both of you for being here tonight. You don't hear me speaking English often, so I'm sorry. I have a really strong French accent, so if you don't understand anything, I can repeat. I would be happy to repeat for you. For me, the exhibition Africa Fashion is actually, I saw it a couple years ago in London, and I was about to travel to New York to see the presentation of the exhibition also in New York, and having the exhibition traveling across the Black Atlantic, for me it was, even like the symposium was also, the goal was the same thing, having those conversations, bringing community together, and being able to have those stories shared, not just in one country, but having those conversations about the continent here in Canada, having those conversations with panelists coming from the States, coming from Ghana, coming from London, coming from different parts of the world. And I think it's fascinating for me how we share so many things, we have so many things in common, and we don't really get often the occasion to be together. And I moved to Canada a couple years ago, not a couple years ago, almost 15 years ago. And I realized that, I was born in France, I grew up in France, I traveled a couple times in Africa. I went to Congo, I went to Ghana, I went to Senegal. I was able to travel to different countries in Europe. And when I moved to Canada, I realized that so many conversations that we had with my colleagues in Europe, in Africa, we didn't have them in Canada, that it was like we were separated. And for me, this exhibition, in the same way we were thinking about the symposium, is to create conversation for us, realizing that we share so many things, that we are so much powerful when we are together, and also realizing that there is a beauty in just being together and having those type of conversation on those type of exhibition where we talk about joy, when we talk about care, when we talk about community, when we talk about power, when we talk about the way we don't just dress because it's cool. The way I dress is my identity, is my culture, is my heritage. And for me, having this symposium in conversation with this exhibition is also to share that we can also have conversation not just about racism and about those type of topics, but the power we have together. And it's a beautiful occasion in a beautiful institution. And I'm so happy that the exhibition is just Africa fashion, but in conversation with the exhibition you curated, which is absolutely amazing. And you have a platform, and you take this platform to give a voice to other women. And this is exactly the work that you do, Theo, and I think I don't need to say more.
Well, and that's the thing, too, because it's you talked about you saw Africa Fashion in London. I also saw Africa Fashion in London. I also saw it in Brooklyn, New York. I've also had the pleasure of seeing it now, but it's so completely changed with your intervention. So please tell us about how you shape-shifted something that has genuinely moved across waters, across continents.
Thank you, firstly. I'm really so honored and touched to be on this panel, and the words that you said as well, Diane. Shapeshift. I don't know that I shapeshifted other than just pulled back another layer of the story that was there. It's underneath, it's in the pieces. I love the beginning of Africa Fashion when we go into the history and we look at textiles and indigo, and to me I think about all the hands that touch that and the stories. And then it's like traveling into the next section of how it then becomes an industry and how it grows. And for me, that's all a part of the Aunties work that's there, because it's these women who exist within these communities, who have these traditions, who hold these traditions and share them, and not realizing that they're sharing more than just a technique or practice. They're sharing knowledge, they're sharing connection. It's that relationality that exists. These are the dynamics of community that we don't see, we don't realize that they're there, but they're what hold us together. And it's that cohesion that allow us to move on to the political aspects of what it is being a Black person. So really, I think about not so much a shape-shifting as just wanting to tell another aspect of the story that I found wasn't given enough light, using Montreal because that's where we are as the center, but knowing that this is a story that could be told anywhere.
Right. But it does matter that it's being told here, and it does matter that there's such a huge component of joy. As you were talking about with Africa Fashion, there's a celebration, and one of the things that unfortunately we encounter as part of the Black experience is there's some bad stuff. I'm just, we don't have the time. And so a lot of times when we talk about maybe not so much shape-shifting, but like pulling back the layers, as we pull back the layers, the reason that there are so many layers is because we still exist. And one of the things that's come up a lot lately is this idea of resiliency. I know I've often shared, like, I don't ever want to be a strong Black woman ever again in my life. And I think that's one of the things that Aunties Work does is it is hard work, but that's also part of our softness because it's part of how we come together. I would love for both of you to talk about how you're moving through these layers of finding your joy, but also it's hard work.
Yes, it is all of those things. It's just living and existing and realizing that that's a part of life. And sometimes we're trying to be one thing or this thing or the other thing without realizing that we're all of these things. And there are moments where we move the dial, you know, we may be on one side of that line before, and actually I don't even want to talk in terms of dualism because let's just throw that out. Let's talk in terms of these things exist all at the same time. They're overlapped, they're layers, and they're always happening, and they're constantly moving inside of us. And we think that we have to be this one thing or this other thing, but we are all of these things. We're soft, we're hard, we're funny, we're angry. We are all of these things. There are moments when we are having a terrible time and we laugh. Why? Because it's a part of a relief, but it's part of us also recognizing that this is how we keep moving, is seeing the humor in some of the most ridiculous situations, but then picking ourselves up and continuing to move on. It's that break, it's that time, it's that space. Doing the exhibition, but in general, my thought process is always thinking about the multitude of things that are happening all at the same time within me and knowing that nothing is linear. And when I connect community and Aunties Work and the things that I've been doing in terms of sustainability, it's recognizing that none of these things, there is no one solution, there is no one way of being, there are all these aspects that are happening all at the same time. And that's beautiful. And we get so caught up, I think, in this idea that we have to be one thing or the other without understanding that we are all of these things.
Something that I think about almost every day is the word of one of auntie that I really love, Toni Morrison, when she was saying the very function of racism is distraction. And it's really something I'm thinking about every day. Do I want to be distracted and thinking that my life is just about fight, my life is just about this layer of my identity, or do I want to be able to live in my joy and live in my truth? And I think it was I would say 4 or 5 years ago, I decided that joy would be part of my curatorial practice. And it's something that joy and care at the center of my curatorial practice. It's something that I think about every single day when I work, when I collaborate with someone, the way I navigate in this world. How can I make sure that joy is at the center? It's some institution I don't collaborate with because I know that they don't really care about care, and I know that when I will come to them and talk about joy, they won't really understand what I want to talk about. So for me, I understand those layers, but I decided to reclaim that joy is the center of my identity, the center of my curatorial practice, center of my life. And I also know that I have anger. I also know that I am all those things, but I want to make sure that I won't let anger consume me. And I would say, like, since George Floyd, and it was a really difficult collective time for all of us. And it's at this moment that I realized I had so much anger. Every day I was waking up and feeling like I cannot change anything in this world. The world is doomed. Why do I, like, what is Nigra Iuventa for? I talk about community, but the community is exhausted, and it was the only thing I was thinking about. And one of my closest friends, Clarence, and we had a conversation about joy, and we decided to create a collective called Black Joy Montréal. And the collective was about how do we bring joy to our community. When we started the collective, the Fine Art Museum of Montreal contacted us and wanted to do a collaboration and a project. And for the project, at first they were asking us to maybe talk about racism in the relationship to the work of the collection. And in my head, I was like, but do you hear the name of it's Black Joy?
But does that say something about the sinister nature of racism, that there is, unfortunately, there must be a particular joy that is had, otherwise the system would not still exist. Everyone can't be miserable. Someone's benefiting from this system. And I love that you said you've centered joy in your life and in your curatorial practice. My three tenets of my curatorial practice are meaningful, useful, and joyful. And they do go back and forth between my personal life and my professional life, which is also a challenge, because one of the things that you're starting to touch on is when, as so many things that come out of the Black experience, they are commodified. And so what's the balance of finding these expressions of joy that are supported, but also it's kind of a two-part, the nuance of this multi-hyphenate space, because we're talking about humanity at its very core. And sometimes we don't start there. We are having a conversation amongst Black women, but we are humans. We are people first and foremost, and that's not always seen. So what is that balance when you start talking about your work, but it's also your life? And then, just to lighten it up a little bit, how do you dress for that?
Balancing my work and life. Yeah.
Or not. It's okay to not be okay.
At this point, my work and life, they intermingle, they're one. When you were speaking about the anger, being in the industry, I went into fashion because I love clothes. I love the way they can make somebody feel. It's the look, it's the way somebody puts themselves together and the way they walk and that feeling, and I see them, and it doesn't matter how expensive the pieces are, it's how they put that together. And I love seeing something fit somebody. The darts, the patterns, all these things, the creativity behind that, the pieces, how they come together. And the industry was taking that away from me. And the longer I was there and the more I understood about systems and the dynamics and how things play, the less and less I was enjoying fashion.
And you 25 years, right, ish?
Just about over, yeah. And towards the end of my time working directly as a fashion designer, I had to find a space where I could release that, because I was like, I can't keep going with this. Like, I'm not happy. I'm doing my work because it's instilled in me from many aunties that you do the job. You always take pride in the work that you do. But that was tainted by the anger I was feeling because I could see all these things that I was talking about with friends and in community, all these systems of oppression, I could see them being replicated day in and day out in an industry. Even though you're working on sustainability and people are trying to do it's the same things that are being replicated. And you spend so much of your day in this space because that was my job. And I knew I had to find an out. When I started a nonprofit growing up, it was about that out. But it was also beginning to see that my work is life for me. And it shouldn't be that it's hard. You should be enjoying the thing that you're doing. I don't know that that's a privilege, and I'm sorry that I live in a world where it seems like enjoying the thing that you do on a day-to-day is a privilege.
It's a whole other panel. Keep going.
Yeah, it's sad. It makes you angry and you're sad because you're in that space. Yeah. And I began to say to myself, I only have so much time. I need to start creating spaces where I feel good. And I realized that I could do that with friends, because when you're hanging out with your friends, you realize you're creating a space. You are feeling something that you don't feel at work. You did that with your people. And then you begin to realize, well, this is me working outside the system. We talk about a parallel praxis. It's the beginning of thinking, of imagining what something else could be, but I'm doing this with my community, with my friends first. And then work and life all begin to intermingle. And what I'm finding is, my friends laugh at me, Nadia, do less. I'm like, yes, do less, but I'm also enjoying what I'm doing. Yes, I do need to rest, but I'm enjoying what I'm doing. It can be tough, it can be tiring, but I love what I'm doing. So for me, it's all one. And I'm in a position now where I feel good about the things that I've been able to do. Doing Aunties Work, that was work, but I enjoyed every moment of it. I enjoyed the things that it brought me. I enjoyed the doors that it opened. I enjoyed the conversations I had, the people I met. Those were all beautiful moments. And they have fulfilled me in a way that work, that 9 to 5 that I was doing, could not. So I keep moving in that path. And it took me over 25 years to get to a point where I was like, I'm okay to do this. And if I keep following this path, I'm going to get to the next thing that's going to keep making me smile. And I don't have to know what that is, as long as I keep working towards that, or in the direction of that, or fulfilling the thing that is fulfilling me, doing the thing that is fulfilling me. And how do I dress for that? With fun and joy. I wake up in the morning, I'm like, what am I wearing? How am I feeling? It's an openness. I only put on things that make me feel good because I realize I should only be feeling good. Why would I torture myself? So I put on things that make me smile, and that is how I am approaching work. That's how I'm approaching dress. That's how I'm approaching conversations and things that I'm doing with friends. What is going to make me happy? And I'm going to go with that.
And we thank you. Diane?
Thank you. I totally resonate with what you said, and it was the same thing with me with creating Nigra Iuventa. For me, work is my life, is work, work is my life. It's the same thing, and I enjoy every single thing that I do with Nigra Iuventa, creating those spaces, being able to collaborate with people that I love their work ethic, I love their values, being able to... being able to have conversation with both of you is such a joy, and the way I dress for that is it's the same thing as what you said. I love I love shape. I love wearing huge things and having wearing you can see with my pants. I love balloon jeans and I love shapes. And I realized that what I wear is saying something about, as I was mentioning earlier, about my identity, about my culture, and about my heritage. So, and most of the time, I would be the only black woman, only black curator, only black person in the room. And I know that I grew up in a culture where my mom would say, if you leave home, like when you leave home, you're representing the entire family. So when I moved to Canada, I was so, like I have to hire my shirts and everything. And when I moved here, sometimes I would see people like with shirts that,
wrinkled.
Yeah. And I was, it was confusing for me because my mom was like, when you do that, it's a shame on the entire family. And the way you dress is the way people are going to respect you. The way you dress is also the way, when I enter a room, and I know that being a black woman, being a minority in this room, if I wear clothes that make me look powerful, it completely changes the dynamic. And once I realized the power of that, I enjoy my work. The part I enjoy the most about my work as a curator, I cannot say I love curating exhibition and meeting artists, and of course. But I really love going to openings and being able to show my entire identity with my clothes. And I think it's a really important also part of my work. And I know that this representation, I don't just represent myself, that I represent my family, that I represent my culture, and sometimes, being in those rooms and being well dressed can make a complete difference. So I take time to wear what I wear, and I enjoy wearing what I wear.
And we thank you. And it's interesting because, again, this is a transatlantic conversation, but we all grew up in completely different places with different parents, different siblings, different, educational backgrounds, all of those things. But there are those lived experiences of, again, do not walk out of this house, right? Like your face is washed, things are ironed and pressed, hygiene is part of this conversation. And I love that we all three enjoy this practice of self-fashioning. And I want to lean into that in the ways that it's been used as both resistance and assimilation in the diaspora. And with that, I want to talk about sometimes the challenge that can come with the power that you bring to a room when you do wear what you wear, because what you're wearing is not wearing you, and it causes you to wear people in the room out.
I don't think I dress for those people.
That's part of the that's part of the challenge.
I'm trying to think if I would have said this, when I was in my 20s, but I've just loved clothes so much. But I definitely think that I'm happy that I wear them out. I'm actually happy because it means, hopefully, that they're taking stock of what's changing around them. And clothing is powerful. And so many things have made us think that it's not. Like, it's not a superficial thing, but so many of the messages that we get, or the narratives, talks about it being just like, something you buy for this event.
Less than in some way, like frivolous.
There's nothing frivolous about how we put ourselves together and face the world. There's nothing frivolous about how we express ourselves in our clothing. And for me, a t-shirt is art and joy and story practices. It's all of this. So I respect my clothes so much.
Yeah.
When I get to mend a piece of my clothing, I love that because I realize it's just, it is even more me. And should I pass it on or go somewhere else, then part of me is going, that story is also going, the way that I sit, the way that I move, the areas that you rub out. That's all speaking to my life and who I am and the things that I've been doing. And as I mend it, I'm adding to that story. And it becomes, I'm also a fan of visible mending. People talk about invisible, visible. I love visible mending because I want people to see what has been going on with my clothing.
Life, yeah.
I think about, I don't remember, it's a podcast I was listening to and it was talking about denim, and we know denim has a very deep history. Negro cloth. That's what it was. That's what it was called. And they were talking about how denim, it would be passed on. The men working, the next person would get it, and you would get it with the areas that were worn. And that was telling the story of how tall that person was who had it before. But it was also sharing a lived life. This is what is in our garments. And this is what the industry doesn't want you to think about, because why would you get rid of something that is telling your story? Why would you want to go out and purchase a new thing if this other thing, this piece that you have from before, is sharing with each person that you see on the street a part of your story? Well, the industry can't function that way. And that's when I begin to think about systems and what these systems are pushing us to do, and what we have to be constantly fighting against, and it's tiring. But these are the things that are happening all around us, and a t-shirt is just a very simple example, but it speaks to larger issues that we experience every day. So for me, clothing isn't small or frivolous or superficial, it speaks to so much more, and I love that even in Aunties Work and the other work that I do with Growing Art, that I get to talk about these deeper stories and let people know that what you put on says a lot about you. It says where you've been, things that you've purchased, why you wear them. It says a lot about what you think about yourself. This clothing reveals so much. And so I'm happy if they wear down folks when they say more than they're ready to take in.
Sorry, I'm gonna answer the question after, but you were saying something about, for me, which is really important, sustainability. And I don't own many clothes. I have a few things, and sometimes my friends will make fun of me because, I have one. Everybody knows my pink shirt that I wear quite often, and because I don't shop a lot, and when I wear something, I'm thinking about, okay, I buy a few things. I want to make sure that I buy from a brand. It might be more expensive, so I will buy one piece every year, and I want to make sure I buy from a brand where nobody is exploited. I want to make sure that I wear something that I can keep for years. So and when we were saying about, it speaks also what you're wearing about your values. For me, it's really important when people touching the material of it, touching. Oh, it's really good quality, but because I don't buy a lot, but it takes so much time for me to purchase one thing. And it's really, really important for me to be able to wear those values with my clothes. It's amazing to talk about sustainability, to talk about having a green talk, but buying clothes every single week, and I'm really against fast fashion, and it happens sometimes that I will buy something from fast fashion, and I feel so bad. But if I know I'm going to an important event, and I want to say something in this event, what I'm wearing is saying something, I will never wear a piece that I purchased at I won't name a brand or anything, but it's really something important, and I know how it's important in your work, and even all the community you built, and knowing and understanding the entire process. I don't know if I can also ask a question, but can you talk about the process and the growing art work that you're doing with your organization?
Yeah. Fashion itself, and let's talk about materiality and material culture. There are so many steps to getting a piece into a store. First, thinking about where the base, the fiber is coming from. Are we talking about something that's man-made, like polyester? Are we talking about something that's natural? Hemp, cotton, wool. How was that plant or animal raised? Already, that is a whole process.
And on whose land?
But just look at already, just from that, look at the conversation that we can have, starting with clothing. I haven't even begun to move back. Already, we're talking about a history of colonialism. We're talking about capitalism and why is it on that land? Why is it being done there? Why isn't it done here? Why don't we grow materials around us anymore? Why is most of the clothing that we make nowadays made from man-made materials? Why aren't most of them natural? Time, money, time, money. These are going to be the recurring themes: time, money. So from cultivating the materials that you need, if you're growing them, then you have to harvest them, you have to transform them. And I'm going to say this, I am just coming back from New Brunswick because I was at a meeting with farmers. I also work with the National Farmers Union. And I think that's important to say because there are so many people doing so many different things that move our lives forward that we don't think about. And that is another part of that hidden work that we don't always recognize. So even in your garments, there are farmers who have to take care of that in many different countries. They have to put the seeds in, they have to grow the plants, they have to harvest them, and then they have to be transformed. And then once those fibers are transformed, somebody has to spin them to create a yarn. And then that yarn has to become a material, so that has to be woven. And then after it's woven, it has to be cut into a garment. And somebody on the other side of an ocean somewhere is probably sending information back to somebody in another country as to how to design it. And those designs, unfortunately, the freedom of creativity we think exists in fashion isn't actually there because people are just trying to make whatever is selling. And then somebody has to go out and sell that garment. So they have to travel and meet with different stores and different places in different countries. And then you have to have fittings, and that garment has to go back and forth between one country to the next so that you can approve fittings. And then you have to ship it off to another country. So many different steps. The work that I do with Growing Art is really just getting people to begin to understand some of those steps, to create experiential learning activities so that you understand the work that it takes from growing something to transforming it. It's just a tip in the iceberg, but then it leads us to have these deeper conversations about why is the industry the way it is? Why are these things traveling across all these different places? Why don't we have a local industry? Can we do that? What could local infrastructure look like? All of this we get to reimagine, and that's part of the work. And it's fun. It has gotten me to understand clothing in a way that all my years in fashion that I could not understand because I wasn't growing it. And it also gives people a very hands-on understanding of so many of the concepts that we talk about, from the imperialism, the colonialism, and systems of oppression, diaspora practices, reclamation of heritage. All of these things can happen through clothing.
Thank you. And I don't know, Theo, if you remember, when we first met, it was at Documenta 15. Do you remember?
At the moment, the fast fashion movement?
Yes, the installation and how we were moved. Can you talk a little bit? Do you remember this piece? And
I think that, okay, so that was also, I think, one of the moments that we kind of started to bond a little bit. Because thinking about what Nadia was saying, you can tell and you can see when someone loves how they have fashioned their body, and it is one of the most exciting and attractive things to me. I don't care where you got it. I don't care how much you paid for it. I care that you look good and feel good in it. And so there's a vibe thing. And again, sort of the naming scenario. There were so many amazing installations at Documenta 15. At Documenta 15, one of them by Sunny Dolot that was really looking at the waste that the fashion industry creates, but it's not necessarily the fashion industry that creates it as much as it is that it's what supports it, because consumerism, capitalism, so on and so forth, it's very circular. And so in this moment we came upon, has anyone ever seen the big bins that they sort of bundle trash, and they're very large, like bales? I'm a bit southern, so I'm thinking bales of hay. And there were tons of these stacked up that had built a room. They were all made of discarded clothing from the Western Hemisphere that had been dumped in the global South. And Diane and I came upon it. And we both, we were walking up to it and trying to kind of figure out what it was, because it was in the distance. And when we realized what it was, we were both emotional. And by emotional, I mean we had to walk away and we're in tears. And to compound this experience, someone that was with us, we knew had recently bought fast fashion. And in that moment, instead of kind of quietly taking it in, I think that we were trying to figure out what to do to call her in and not call her out, but then also trying to balance the gravity of the moment, because we have this person that we are supporting and not shaming, but saying we can support you in a different way. We had our emotions that we were processing. We had all of these people that we knew that this dumping was affecting, and not just the environment for those people, but their ability to create industry, which makes me think about what you were just saying. It's they have so much waste. They couldn't grow if they wanted to. They couldn't build if they wanted to. And because they're being inundated with someone's discards from a Saturday night, and again, to your point of, again, we're not shaming anyone for buying a cheap t-shirt, but we do want to have these conversations about an investment. So when you talk about making an investment, when you know you're showing up and what you're wearing is your true identity, it is a value conversation. And I think that why fashion matters, and one of the reasons why we do what we do, how we do it, is because it's actually one of the easiest ways to engage in a conversation with someone. Audrey heard me say this yesterday. I make the comment, we've not become a nudist society just yet. And until we do, we all have to clothe our bodies with something. And so when we think about how we fashion a diaspora, how you fashion your identity, how you self-fashion a community, the import and impact of that is resonant, and it does carry on for generations. Thank you for making me tell that story. What do you remember?
I remember being really emotional. And I think it was the first time for me actually really seeing and being able to touch what the waste was. And it was really shocking, and it was transformative also for me. And I do think so many things happened in me during Documenta 15, and that installation for me was like kind of life-changing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I realized that, okay, this is real. This is impacting people's life. And that was just an installation, but it was so much waste. And yes, it was. And sometimes I think about this piece, and yeah, it was the most important part of Documenta 15 for me. And I just also wanted to ask you something. I wanted to know, because you asked us about fashion and in terms of our work and how we dress. You were asking us how we dress in our work and why is it important, but also because your work is actually really based on fashion and how the way you dress is important for you, and what are you trying to say with the way you dress?
I did say you could ask questions, didn't I? I feel very similarly to both of you, of course. The simple thing is I wear two colors. I wear black and white, just keep it simple. And something that I think is surprising for a lot of people, because I do work in fashion and have worked in fashion for years, is that I have this expansive wardrobe, but I do not shop. I make purchases. I invest in items. I have a very small, tight closet, and like you said, I have a pink shirt that everyone has seen this like a million times in Boston, and they will see it a million times more. I buy things that, again, I know that the people that made them were well compensated, properly compensated. I purchase them from, if it's from a boutique, which is very rarely, this happens to be from a woman-owned boutique, December Thieves. So again, it's being very intentional, because it is an entire industry and system, and it's so easy to be distracted by the shiny, pretty thing or the trend. And part of self-fashioning to me is just kind of looking in the mirror, and it's blocking everything out. And I think that's how I get dressed for work, especially, is I think about who do I need to be today? How do I need to show up for myself? Perhaps who do I need to show up for in the context of Auntie becoming a professor? All of a sudden my students are now like, there's been this Professor Auntie thing that's happening. And I think about moments where I need them to sit up straight, and I dress that way. And I think about when I'm doing their critiques, which can be a little unsettling for them sometimes, I actually wear something softer, so that I appear and feel hopefully softer to them. But I believe fashion is a language, and I 100% use my wardrobe to go to war for me, so I don't have to. Mm. Do you do that?
Yes. Yes. And it's making me think of, we talk about representation and what we see, and a thing that stuck with me, especially when working on the exhibition, was these aunties that I was talking about and bringing up, how they always appeared to me and how they made me feel. So what they wore and how they carried themselves and how I wanted to emulate that. so much of, I think, who we are and what we believe about ourselves starts with the examples that we have in front of us. And when we have really strong, that word, but when we have these really vibrant examples, they touch us in a way that we don't even realize. And thinking about like Aunties Work, for me, that was also part of it. My mom, she's here. My mom has been an example to me of just how you get dressed with the most fun and joy, and the way she would put herself together. I remember watching her put on outfits when she was going out and knowing like always stylish. Everybody knows my mom for how she dresses. And I wanted to be her. I remember looking at her outfits and her shoes and wanting to be able to put on those shoes and wear those outfits, and they stuck with me. And her being at events and feeling so much pride, like that's my mom. And everybody knows that's Auntie Helen. Everybody knows Auntie Helen. And it wasn't just that she looked good, it was because it was the feeling that she exuded and that took people in. And it just, like that feeling, like seeing her look good and feel good made me feel good and made me stand up taller. And when I go somewhere and I'm in a room with aunties, I want to make sure that I'm representing and that they are proud of me. We don't realize that these are all lessons on how we can move through life. And when things are being thrown at you that make you feel bad or make you feel down or make you question who you are, these are the things that we lean on to keep moving forward. And they're so subtle and soft, but impactful and strong at the same time. And I think part of their power is that we don't realize that it's happening. We don't realize that we're picking up these cues, that we're learning these things, that we're learning how to carry ourselves through the world. And all of this to me ties together in terms of self-fashioning, the practices we pick up. And now as I learn more about growing and actually making textiles, I'm learning more also about what is fashion and that there are different fashion systems, and questioning like, okay, why do we wear the things that we do? And why is it a pant with a shirt? And what could my heritage have been had we not been taken from a place? What would clothing have looked like for us? Would it be the same thing? There's so many stories tied to this, so many narratives, and so many ways that I can think about how I choose to engage with my clothes and the world. And I've learned so much, or began to learn that by watching my aunties around me, and I thank them for that. But yeah, that's the other thing when I think about fashioning, is also now beginning to understand that there are different fashion systems, and we are just so used to the one that we experience in this Western culture that we've grown up in, but recognizing that there are other pieces and ways of wearing clothes and expressing ourselves in our clothing. And it's been really exciting for me to begin to think about these different systems that exist and recognizing that this isn't the only one.
Who would you say is the auntie that inspired you the most? And I ask this in the context of an auntie can be an auntie or not an auntie, an aunt, an aunt, an auntie, again, depending on where you might be from.
I would say that my inspiration would always be my mom. And she's my true inspiration for everything, the way she dresses, the way she speaks, the way she's always comfortable. And I think what I admire the most with her is that she is true to herself. She will speak her mind. She will never, if she has any issue with anybody, she will tell you straight up. And she doesn't care, you could be the president of the world or what, she will tell you if she has a problem with you. And the way she is so confident but at the same time, she is so soft and calm and sweet. And she's truly like my inspiration for everything. And she will dress to go to work, and she works with kids, with babies. And sometimes I'm like, but mommy, but they won't understand what you're wearing. Like, it's just like, they're between like 6 months old to, let's say, 3 years old. And she spends all day with babies. But she's like, I don't dress for people, I dress for myself. And I realized that I wanted to be like my mom, and how she inspired me during the pandemic. I was home with myself, but I would wake up and put on, dress up for the day, just being at home with myself. And I realized like the power that, what I was wearing was holding, and I realized at that moment how inspiring was my mom. And she's my true inspiration. Like and I don't like to talk about other people that I don't know, authors or my mom is like, she should be your inspiration in life. Like she's amazing. Like, and also she doesn't like when I call her a feminist. Because she's from another generation, and I'm like, mommy, you're the real feminist, like the realest feminist I've ever seen. I have 2 brothers, and the way my brothers, I never did any chore at home, because my mom was telling my brothers, oh, since you're older, you are the one who have to do that, and I don't want Diane to do that. And when my friends were coming over, and I realized that, oh, why do your brother do that and you don't? And I was like, because they're older. This is like that for everybody. Like in old and then I realized that the way I was raised was phenomenal, and she's there. That's my mom.
Thank you. Well, and it's also the idea of fashion being a language, even though perhaps your mom didn't use the language of feminist, her clothing did. And I should have talked to her during the pandemic, because my closet became like a museum that I would just go and visit and look at pieces. But I tried them on. I do not try on the shoes at my museum, just for the record. Speaking of talking about moms, what would you take from your mom's closet? I know you said your mom is here, so tread lightly.
It's in the exhibition. There is a piece. It's a little mini dress, and my mom, she actually sewed that when she was living in Beckway. My mom was from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and she brought it with her. And I have a picture of her and 2 of my aunts, and she's wearing that outfit. And I have a picture of me wearing it as a Halloween costume when I was a little kid. And I have a picture of me wearing it going out to a party in my 20s. I loved it. And I would, so that's one thing. But I do remember, she knows this, so it's not a secret. I remember when my mom would go off to work in the morning, and she was a nurse. And I'd be there afterwards, and I would go through her closet, and I would like take her blazer, sometimes a scarf, and I put them on to wear out to school, make sure I put them back. But she always knew. So I was very much going into my mom's closet to take out her pieces and put them on. And I got scolded a few times, but I think she also, she felt good. Her daughter wanted her pieces.
A sense of pride there, too.
Yes, I think so.
She had a good taste.
She can tell me later, but I think so. She did. I always admired my mom's style. And I was always, like, my love of fashion for sure is born out of seeing my mom get dressed and seeing the joy that she put into the outfits and the clothing that she would wear, and how people would react to her. And it wasn't because they thought, oh, this person is great because she's wearing this nice outfit. It was her style and the way that she moved through a space, that's what people were reacting to. And I think that's what attracted me into clothing.
Your mom's not here, say it.
I would say my mom's shoes, because it's really important for her. That's the most important part of her outfit, her shoes. And she would say, the way I walk into this world, I need to have the best shoes possible. And we wear the same size. So every time I go home, most of the time, I will bring a pair with me. And when I go back home, for example, the one I'm wearing today, it was a fight for her not to take them. So she wear a lot of things that I have. And in my family, it's like, I don't steal, but my sister, when she forgets something near my suitcase, I will bring them to Canada with me.
You just take care of them for her.
Exactly. And then when I go back home, my mom, she will take some things from me, and my mom and my sister, like, they share their clothes sometimes. So especially our shoes. I love our shoes.
I love that there wasn't one thing. It's just like shoes, plural, all of them.
Yeah.
Perfect. That makes me also think about, you're talking about you and your sister going back and forth, and you were talking a little bit about mending earlier, thinking about like different approaches to sustainability. Do you swap and trade clothes with your aunties and your friends? Is that these pants were given to me by a friend of mine, which is what made me think about that question. Do y'all do that? And are all of your friends like as fashionable as you are?
Yes. And yes, we have swaps. The organization, Growing Art, that I co-founded as well, we have what we call swap and sews. So we also do clothing swaps, get people together and show them how to sew, mend. The idea isn't to do the mending for them, but really to show them how to use the machines. And not just to mend, to alter the garment so that this thing that you're swapping can also be changed and become new again for you. So yes, swapping we have a lot of fun with that.
Awesome.
Same here, but just with my family. I don't swap with my friends. And it's mostly, yes, with my family, with my brothers, my dad. I wear a lot of things from my dad.
You do have an amazing collection of like button-down.
Thank you. Yeah, that's my dad. So my dad, but yeah, mostly with my family. And I love when my dad, he has some of his blazers and jackets that been there for over 20 years. And he doesn't wear them anymore. And when I go home and I bring them with me, and exactly what you were saying, I feel like I'm wearing a history, a heritage. And my dad used to be a singer-ish when he was younger. And I have like a jacket at home that he has a vinyl with him, with his band or whatever on the vinyl. It was almost, I think, 45 years ago. And I have the jacket, and when I wear this jacket, I just feel like a rock star, or I feel so powerful. So I do that, but just with my family. Yes.
If you can think about the ways that perhaps fashion may have also failed you at some point, when you were thinking about navigating the spaces of, and I say this from a place of thinking about mending, thinking about swaps, thinking about, and we used to call them hand-me-downs. I had an older sister, and so like I used to be excited, like I couldn't wait to get the sweater that she had been wearing, would never let me borrow. Do you think that with these swaps that are happening with Growing Art, with like the swap and sews, teaching people how to mend and just having these conversations, do you think that might be one of the easiest first steps to changing the landscape of the fashion system and the way that, as a community, as a society, that we are approaching not just what we put on our body, but how it ended up existing in the first place. Where did it come from? The people behind it. Do you think, and just kind of almost like a yes or no, do you think that that might be one of the easiest first steps, is to perhaps pull away the stigma of you got that at a secondhand store?
Yes.
Yes, 100%.
Do you think that we can get everyone on board?
I think we're heading there.
Same thing.
Is everyone in this room on board? Awesome. This has been an amazing conversation that we can carry on for quite some time. As you can see, I have tons of questions for them. They also have questions for me, but I would love to open it up to you to see if you might have anything that you want to inquire of Diane or Nadia.
Hello. This is an amazing conversation, and I thank all three of you for the wisdom that you've shared today. I know that I'm leaving with a lot of knowledge and things to reflect on. The question that I had is related to when you had said calling in rather than calling out. This conversation and the exhibitions as well, I think they're beautiful because it's a celebration, it's uplifting, and encourages us as Black people and those of us from the diaspora to find pride in our identities. And at the same time, I think as we do this sort of work, of forming this identity outside of what the systems of oppression have made us believe about ourselves, there can, and I speak just in general from myself and others, this habit of trying to re-empower yourself, but then ultimately utilizing the tools of the system of oppression, so let's say consumerism or capitalism, to form this identity, and so then it creates its own spiral. And so I'm wondering what is the best way to call in and to gently, talk and have conversations with people in our communities and elsewhere about supporting somebody wanting to self-identify and redefine themselves without falling back into the system or the practices or, consumerism, balancing as well, maximalism as culture and fashion, not as frivolous, but as a tool. And that fine line between also filling the void that living in a system of oppression can create within us.
Thank you for the question. Have you wanna start with that?
So many things come up with the different things that you've said. The first thing that comes to mind, and it's something that stays with me all the time, is that Audre Lorde quote about master's tools.
Never dismantle the master's art.
It's never far in my brain, in my mind, because I know that all the things that we're doing, we're still doing them within a particular system and structure. And that system, like the Ouroboros, that serpent that eats itself, it's constantly happening. So even as you're trying to fight it, you're still living in it. And this is where I think about creating our own spaces, and when I talk about a parallel praxis. So how do we do things within our communities amongst ourselves where we are beginning the reimagining, and in that, these are the things that we're doing that can shatter the system. And I think people get caught up when thinking about systems change as being something that happens up here. When system change happens in our communities, it's subtle, it's one-on-one, and it's these small things that begin to break what's happening up there. It all falls down. We hold it up. It will fall down if we make it.
Right.
For friends and family and folks, when we're trying to speak to them about the issues with some of the clothing that they're wearing, the harms that it's doing, It's specific. There's no one answer. It really depends on the person, and calling in is always helpful when you can. Because you never want to make somebody feel bad about something that they're wearing because they're trying to fill a void. So what are the things that you can do to help them, or at least to show them that there are other things that will fill that void? It's not so much about pointing out and being like, no, don't do this. But maybe it's like, hey, can we hang? Just a simple example, but it could be any of these things, because as you've pointed out, there is a void, and that's part of what makes us move into consumerism, because we're trying to fill something. So what are the things that we can do in our lives to address the void, which will then take care of the consumerism? There's no one answer.
Sorry, I just want to answer in French. Est-ce que je peux répondre en français à cette question? Est-ce que c'est correct? En fait, il y a quelque chose que je mentionnais tout à l'heure quand je disais qu'effectivement, je faisais attention à ce que je portais et que si j'avais un événement important, ne pas porter de fast fashion, par exemple. Mais ce qui est important de dire aussi dans la façon dont je communique avec mon entourage autour de ces questions-là, c'est de ne pas être dans le stigma. C'est-à-dire qu'il faut le faire avec vraiment beaucoup de bienveillance, on s'inscrit dans du temps long. C'est des choses qui prennent du temps, de le faire avec beaucoup de care, beaucoup de bienveillance, et de comprendre qu'il y a aussi toute cette dimension économique qui intervient, parce que nécessairement, de la même façon que consommer de façon responsable, que ce soit des aliments ou que ce soit la façon dont on s'habille, ça vient avec un coût aussi. Et ça vient avec un privilège, ça vient avec une capacité, un pouvoir d'achat, ça vient avec le temps dont on dispose, par exemple, pour aller en friperie, et de prendre le temps d'aller en friperie, le temps de retrouver le vêtement adéquat, etc. Et tout ça aussi, il faut considérer ces notions de privilège qui interviennent aussi dans ces conversations-là, et donc de prendre un regard intersectionnel sur ces questions, et de le faire avec beaucoup de temps, beaucoup de soin, et surtout sans ne jamais stigmatiser. Et je pense que c'est vraiment ça l'approche et la posture à avoir, et de ne pas être timide aussi d'avoir ces conversations-là. Et moi, je suis très vocale par rapport à ces choses, de me dire que oui, c'est intentionnel ce que je porte, pourquoi c'est intentionnel, comment c'est intentionnel, mais aussi de dire que oui, ça a un prix et c'est une réalité, et que cette réalité, elle vient s'asseoir sur un privilège, et que au-delà aussi, même comme je le précisais, c'est même de se rendre compte que tous ces discours autour de la consommation d'aliments responsables, biologiques, etc., ça s'assoit vraiment sur un privilège. Et donc d'amener tous ces éléments et toutes ces composantes-là à la conversation, je pense que c'est aussi des choses à considérer pour y amener un peu de nuances, et de le faire, encore une fois, avec beaucoup d'amour et beaucoup de soin.
Merci. And, next question.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. This was very, very interesting. Okay. I'm gonna prolong this. Basically, I read a while ago about this concept called enclothed cognition, about the relationship, the sentimental relationship between clothes and like feelings. And then this other author was talking about Irving Goffman and presentation of self, and how you present yourself in a certain way based on different outcomes that you want to reach. And I think that you touched on a lot of this today, as like fashion is joy, but also when you mentioned like fashion as like fighting the wars that you're not, like that you don't want to fight at that moment. Which one do you think comes first? Dressing for joy, or dressing as a way to present yourself in certain situations? Or do you think like different clothes serves different purposes?
I'll actually start with that one. I think it's a both and. Because again, the dressing for me starts with how I feel. And so even if I'm raging or angry, or I have a very important meeting or whatever it is, it's like, how do I feel about it? It's still starting here. And then again, I essentially just demand that everyone else deal with it.
For me, it's very much how I feel. There is no like first or second. If I get up in the morning and I'm like, I need to be cocooned, where's my big sweater? that's what I need. That's how I'm going to face the world. Because if I'm going to be strong in who I am at that moment, then I need the clothes that are going to support that.
Killer.
And sometimes that's soft pants. I think we have time for one more question.
Thank you again for this beautiful conversation. And all the places that you could do this exhibition, why did you pick Montreal? Why was it so important to have it in Montreal?
Aunties Work,
Yes.
because I'm from Montreal. I can tell the story that I understand here. I know that it exists in other places, but really I wanted to highlight a lot of the work that has been going on in Montreal. And also starting with the community that I know for that self-reflection, because it's to honor aunties and talk about their work, but also for us to reflect on why don't we talk about this work more? Why don't we recognize the social that is necessary in social movements and this work that has been going on forever? Why aren't we? I remember being at a talk, and I think this is the first time not the first time, but the first time I recognized that I was having this thought consciously, was that people were discussing a lot of men who had done all these things for the community to push things forward. And yes, they have done that. But in the back of my mind, I was like, well, those men don't do that on their own. There is always somebody organizing, getting people there. Those men have kids. Who's watching the kids when you're up front talking? Like, all of these things I recognize as being part of the work, but we don't always talk about that. So it was really important for me to open the door to that conversation and also ask, when we're thinking about change and systemic change, how we first thought about what we need to address within ourselves so that we don't perpetuate the same bad behaviors. How do we do things in a good way to move forward? So yes, we honor, and in honoring, let's recognize the things that we haven't been talking about. So it was important for me here in Montreal to do that, and I'm happy that I was able to do it in a museum that is also asking itself, well, what are the practices that we've been doing that have been participating in the colonial situations that exist today? And how do we begin to stop doing that?
Thank you.
It's a beautiful question to end on why Montreal, and I know I can say part of why for me is Diane and the amazing work that you have done with Nigra Iuventa, but also specifically with this symposium. Thank you for creating this occasion for us to be together in community and be aunties with each other. Thank you for all of your work. Thank you for bringing Aunties Work to this space so what was once invisible can be made visible. And thank each of you for sharing in this woman's work this evening.